All right, we rolling.
Recording is on.
Yo, yo, yo. Welcome to another edition of the Geeky Bros podcast. I'm your boy Tactix.
Yo, it's your boy Darcy, and my camera is dark as all hell right now. One sec. There we go.
And this is Big Geek Umar. Hello, all.
Yo, you sound a little under the weather there, bud.
Yes, I caught a mild chill, so therefore I have an old-fashioned cold. So thankfully at present no COVID, but yeah, it's funny that we feel nostalgic towards colds now.
I'm also making sure to stay on this side of the camera.
Just in case.
100%.
All right, so Umar, what's on the agenda for today, sir?
Today we're basically doing one topic, but multiple. We're going to be looking at it from multiple angles, and the topic is empathetic masculine leads or heroes in pop culture. And this was because I was watching this character analysis from Pop Culture Detective on YouTube, and he did something called the Fantastic Masculinity of Newt Scamander. For those who don't know, Newt Scamander is from the Fantastic Beasts movies, like they're prequels to the Harry Potter movies. And so he kind of really got to really liking the main character, Newt Scamander, who's this like borderline autistic individual who he's really quiet. He has a hard time connecting with people, but he has a tremendous amount of empathy, a tremendous amount of kindness, and he's just a really sweet person who also happens to be a fully realized wizard. He's not going through training or anything like that. And I found the analysis by Pop Culture Detective to be quite interesting. The fact that he was saying this is a very new style of male leads in film. And I kind of wanted to see, have either of you watched the Fantastic Beasts movies?
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Hell no.
No, I actually have watched it, bro.
I actually haven't.
There we go.
So yeah, Darcy, what was your first impressions of Newt Scamander in the movie? Did you ever pick up on these sorts of aspects, or was that you were just?
What a name!
I know. Yeah. Every time you say Newt Scamander, all I can think of is the Scamander sounds like a commander, and I'm like, he's not a commander. Yeah. It's not his personality. I think that when I watched it, I feel like I had I feel like I was maybe less woke at the time to these. I'm not saying I'm not aware of the topics, but maybe not paying as much attention in watching a film, right? In life, I would feel like I would be more aware at the time. How old is the film, by the way? 2-3 years?
Yeah, I think. Let me just check that out.
But I feel like
2016.
Yeah, even more. And so I feel like when I watched it, maybe I had some feelings where I was like, he's different than what I anticipate. But I feel like more I was comparing it to the Harry Potter franchise more than less about him being masculine, because I was, going in anticipating more Harry Potter-esque stuff. But at the beginning is what I'm referring to. But as it progressed, I really enjoyed his character. I enjoyed the film, though I haven't seen the follow-up because I heard it was just not good, and then I just didn't get around to watching it. But I enjoyed the character. I liked. And I'm kind of maybe somewhat guided by the video that you sent, but I enjoyed aspects of when they were talking about he was making the comment of that there's no marriage or dating or whatever between non-magical and magical people, and his disgust for it in the way that he said it, but he said it still in a clear, but not he wasn't an a-hole when he said it kind of way.
He was they seem like backwards opinions, and he just left it at that. He wasn't you're an asshole or you're racist or anything like that.
Yeah, if you believe in these norms, you're not wrong, but he's calling it out in a way where maybe you've never heard anyone call this out, but it's backwards. And I liked when he did that because one, it felt real in the way that he delivered it because he's a great actor, but it's also like, it parallels with a lot of problems in our society.
Yeah.
And so when I saw that, and I like those aspects of him, and I guess I don't think I was consciously aware, but I really did like his empathy and how much it was about, it was just like a different kind of way of telling a story, and it felt different. But,
So one of the things I also want to bring up is like identifying the traits of like the opposing side. Like we've been mostly talking about like the empathetic aspect of Newt Scamander, but what I really really liked about the video that Pop Culture Detective released is like he also identified not so much like inherently toxic masculinity in all the other like in literally all films, but like he basically went like the typical hero, the typical masculine hero, and like I wrote down some of them. It's like they're autonomous and brazen. They're physically strong, or if they're not physically strong, then they're witty and charismatic. And like witty and charismatic is like Star-Lord from Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, yeah, he can hold his own in a fight, but that's not what he's known for. He's more as the quip guy, that sort of thing. Also, one of the main thing is all these the typical male, they hide their vulnerability. They're like exceptions when they show humility and sensitivity. It's not their defining characteristic as it was for Newt. Like sensitivity and humility is kind of like he's kind of like withdrawn, at the same time he's not like in your face. But all the other like macho heroes of our time, like they're always like in people's faces, and they're always like argumentative. And we as an audience have been kind of conditioned to be more easily forgiving of their aggression and their arrogance, and that's why like when they go into humility and sensitivity, we note that and we're like, oh, that's really good of them to, that they were able to find that in themselves. And also one of the like an opposing characteristic is that like most of these male heroes, even if they are like nice people or something like that, they have destiny thrust upon them, and they're plagued within their place in the world. So that's like kind of like the typical male stuff that Pop Detective kind of brought up. And I found that to be very fascinating because that kind of encapsulates literally every male from all the genres. Like, do you guys agree with that, or like, are there other aspects that you think should have been identified?
I when you're saying it, I kept looking at the Batman on your shirt and as well here, and I was thinking about Destiny thrust upon, and I was like, yeah. And then Superman there, and like Destiny thrust upon. I'm like,
even Wonder Woman too. Like,
yeah.
Well, you could argue that with Batman. Was that really destiny? Or was that him kind of taking? I mean, that was a choice.
That was a tragedy. You're right. Like,
it's fair. It's fair. Yeah, that's a fair argument. Probably more Superman than anything. Destiny was definitely thrust upon him. He was sent in a capsule and sent across a galaxy, and then it's like, you're going to be the savior to a bunch of people that you don't even know. And guess what? You're like 3 months old. Like, so 100% that definitely falls in line. Though I'm actually kind of curious. Do you think that Superman has that destiny thrust upon him? But do you think that Superman represents toxic masculinity, or does he actually have a lot more empathetic in a good storytelling of him? Like, let's not take into account all the bad variations, because I feel like there's the comic strip where he sits with the guy who wants to commit suicide.
Exactly.
And he has the whole long conversation. Like, I don't remember how long he was there with them, but it was like the sun went down kind of a deal.
Yeah.
And I feel like even though Superman has the typical tropes, because he's the all American boy, so he has to have all these tropes. I think that one thing that I appreciate in his character is that they intertwined empathy.
It was kind of like what we're discussing in last week, where we were saying that like Captain America now is kind of what Superman, like Christopher Reeve's Superman, was in the past. Like he's the Boy Scout, like the true Boy Scout. But it's interesting you say that, because like the comics of Superman, they would show more the empathetic side to him as like a side story. But he's also like the New 52 kind of ruined all that. Like New 52 made Superman into like an asshole. Where like even like people were not.
They really caked in the toxic masculinity into him, like so much so that a lot of men weren't even liking it because it was like it's so one trick ponied.
I remember like there was this one panel where people were, I probably mentioned this in the past, like soldiers were dying because like their plane was going down, and like I think it was Green Lantern like noted that to Superman as like go get him, and he's like no, they knew what they were getting themselves into, and like he continued the fight. And I was just like, that is not Superman.
It's kind of like Highlander from The Boys.
Yeah.
You mean Homelander?
Homelander, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I was like, Highlander, there can only be one.
But yeah, I think to that point, I think what works really well with Superman in that regard, in terms of how endearing he is and how empathetic he is that because of like his godlike persona and as like his characteristic in terms of, or like his powers, right? Like he's pretty much OP, right? Yeah. So you'd almost expect, like if someone were to just like describe this being as like Superman, basically listing all of his abilities, in your head you might almost imagine like the masculine toxic, like the toxic masculinity character, like from like like what we got in the New 52. That's who I would naturally envision. But then you get this person who's like, you know, the complete opposite of that, where he's got all these powers, but yet he's so compassionate and so empathetic, and he's very humble and very mindful of his powers, knowing that like at any point in time, like, you know, like if he's not careful, he could wreak havoc on the entire world and things like that, right? So that's kind of what makes him such a great character in that regard. And then the New 52 kind of shat on that and kind of brought to light what we had expected, and it lost that element of, oh, like I'm not surprised, but I'm disappointed by the fact that we have you're basically catering to what I would have originally thought this person would be, rather than surprising me with a different personality that doesn't quite fit with the powers that he possesses. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Let me throw out a point or a theory, which is, do you think that like the guys, when they're deciding on how to rewrite that character, played off of, you know, there's like this with the good Superman, right? There's always this statement of like, well, the thing that sucks about Superman is that he can never really let loose, so he always has to hold back, right? And then you get a few good movies, right? He like or shows, and he fights like, you know, Darkseid, and it's like, yeah, it finally gets to let loose, and that one scene is like, I finally get to like, you know, go all out, right? I don't have to hold back, and that's dope. But do you think that they like wanted to adjust his character because they wanted him to be less having to hold back because of a complaint, and they just baked in the toxicness to get there?
I think what may have happened is the fact that like a bunch of people who became comic book writers were probably grew up with the Superman that like we're just discussing, but like now they're at the helm and they're like, you know, man, if we're like a refranchise and everything, why don't we just make Superman into someone that we wanted him to be? Like he's a badass, like a Batman, but like in Superman form. And I think that didn't work out, because like for me, just before the New 52 happened, there was the Superman comic that came out that had Jim Lee, the guy who drew this. He drew for Superman, and it was an okay story, but like they had him talking to a priest. Like a bunch of Metropolitan people disappeared, including his wife, and he didn't know what to do, so he was talking to a priest. And I remember in like one of the issues, he flies down. Like because the priest is sitting by water, and he flies down and like kind of just like floats right to him and then stands right next to him. And he was like, you know, to be honest, like the priest says to Superman, he's like, to be honest, I expected you to walk on water towards me. And Superman was like, that is an offensive, that's an insult to your faith that I would never, ever do. I would not make your belief into a joke. And I was like, yo, that's what I'm talking about. That's Superman for me. Like the fact that he cared enough, like kind of what you were saying, Tactix. It's like he knows how much power he has, and he is trying to find the humble.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I'm gonna make a reference here from a movie that you guys are like not the fan of, but I like the scene in Man of Steel when he goes to the I think it's a priest, I think it's Catholic church he goes to.
Oh yeah,
and he was asking about like having faith in the way that I forget the exact dialogue, but the priest was kind of making it back to him like, something to the fact whether it's faith or trust was the word, but like you have to like I think it's you have to have faith in others for them to have faith in you or something like that. And like that kind of humility that was brought in that scene, I really enjoyed. Yeah, I think it's a good thing about him, but it's not always good.
Yeah. So okay, now that we've we've identified like the empathetic characteristics, like they are people who try to de-escalate situations as opposed to like rise to the challenge of it. That they have like human connections and but like subtle character developments. That it's like they're already formed. They don't need to make grand like changes to their personalities as they go through. I was watching Demon Slayer, and like I'm obsessed with that show. And the main character Tanjiro, Tanjiro, just is pronounced correctly. I gotta say, I believe that he is the empathetic masculine hero that pop culture detective subscribed to Newt, and like he may be the second clear identified character. What do you guys think about that? Like, do you say that he kind of fits within that new male lead type?
Totally.
I think it's interesting too because it's a character whose journey requires violence, but yet he's like hesitant to be violent. But he's not like he's going in there like, oh, I don't want to ever fight in every episode. Otherwise, it'd be really annoying. But it's like he's has a very strong conviction about what he's going to do the second he's going to do it. But before he has to do it, he'll like it's like he's being empathetic to the situation. And the most empathetic part about him is when he takes like a demon's life. He's actually like what is like the phrase he says, but he's very empathetic about it.
So he shows them sympathy or mercy.
Yeah.
Or no, he almost gives them absolution, to be honest.
Yeah, especially with the Tactix. How far are you into it? Tactix, where are you at in the show?
Oh, me. I'm at the part where they're in all three of the I don't remember the characters' names, but all three of them are in the woods and they're being attacked by the puppeteer demon.
The spider puppeteer?
The spider, yeah.
Oh, I am so glad I didn't say nothing. I was about to talk about that coming up. So, and we're out.
So people watching this, if you're like not done Demon Slayer, or if you're just at the part like we're basically going to be talking up into this spider mountain, creepy crawly aspect. So like everything before that is fair game. So spoiler warning. Tactics. So based on what you've seen so far of Tanjiro, because like I think Darcy and I are all caught up. Like, what do you think of him as what do you think of him as like a male lead?
I definitely agree that he does have a high level of empathy towards these demons, and so upon first glance you're kind of like, well, why does he have so much empathy? And I know I joked about this earlier today about I just couldn't understand it, but then you made a good point where Umar, you made a good point where you said that these people used to be humans. They used to be human beings, and they were then turned into demons. And a part of them, like for example, the drummer, the guy with the drums in his chest, he still had elements of humanity there in terms of his need for acceptance. He wanted to be a part of whatever the main
moves on.
Yeah. And so that was kind of his vocation in a sense, where he wanted to, like, that was his whole mission in life. He wanted to be part of that, the 12 whatever kind of thing. And I think at one point when they were fighting, he had he had made that very evident or whatever to the lead. And so there's where that sympathy kind of stemmed from, where he was kind of like, okay, like, I understand now that this was not your choice. You like, this was not the path that you chose. You didn't want to become a demon, but you know, the cards worked against you, and you were transformed. And you know, you may not want, your intention as a human may not have wanted to be like a killer, but that's just kind of how you are now. And so I do, you know, him as a character has empathy towards that guy, or towards demons that he kills, right? So I understand it from that regard. My concern is that too much of that is going to work against him in battle, where he's going to be too empathetic, not being able to differentiate or separate the human side from the demon side, because a lot of these guys, they're just, you know, they're too far gone.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's the same complex that Batman sometimes I feel he has in terms of the villains and how he empathize. Well, I don't know if I go as far as calling it empathy, but it's kind of like he gives them kind of like a pass where it's just like, yo, I can't kill you because there's a chance that you could, well, for one, if I kill you, I'm no better than you. And two, there's a chance that you might be able to turn your life around and become good again. And so I don't want to destroy any chances of that ever happening, kind of thing. It's kind of like I feel like he's almost caught in his own delusion in a lot of ways. So yeah.
I feel like though sometimes Batman is less on the empathetic and more on the militant discipline of it. And the reason being is because sometimes, like, you know, I think it's because he knows that he actually feels as dark as all the criminals, and he says it, and he'll do horrible things to people, and yet he just never kills them, right? Like, he'll break a lot of bones and disfigure people into a way that they actually, their life is fundamentally changed, right? And he's justifying it off of the level of the crime. And, you know, it's less empathetic. And sometimes then it's just like, I want to go that far and I won't. But I wanted to circle back to Tanjiro for a second. There's something that I find interesting about it. When you were talking, I was thinking about why, and the show is like, you know, you're going to get caught up soon, and there's still plenty of show left to be created, right, that we haven't seen yet. And one of the things that they're hinting at that we haven't seen yet is like the history of their family and why their family is so tight. Like, at some point somebody asks a question like, what makes this family special or something like that, and they don't answer it, they just ask the question. So it's like, it's clearly like a foreshadowing for more information to come later. And so there's going to be something unique that they're going to say, probably. Maybe not. Maybe it'll just be like they're just a close family. But I was thinking of this premise with Tanjiro. So imagine you put like 3 different people. I just have 3 scenarios in my head. 3 different people in the same situation, right? A family member is turned right in front of you, especially after you lose everybody else in your family, right? And if you haven't watched Demon Slayer, you know what the first episode's about. And so now there's 3 different ways I could see people writing this, right? The way that they wrote for him is that, you know, he's highly empathetic person. So how he reacts is a particular way. But you can argue that so like he's not just empathetic, he's also, I find, really decisive and smart. So what happens is that he's leading with empathy, but he's never dumb enough or slow enough to not react to a situation, and he protects himself and then figures out how to protect her right away. Like, that's his priority is to protect her, but he knows he has to protect himself, and he's doing it like a reflex.
Or protect humans. Yeah.
You have another scenario that you could see where somebody is empathetic or sad, right? And it's, you know, it's in the same ballpark, and they go, oh, my family member, and then they just die because the family member kills them because they don't react, right? And then you have the other one where like they just flee or they kill them, right? Like they basically, oh, my family's a demon. I can't do anything with them, right? And I feel like the first two are super common and they're like tropey story stuff.
Yeah.
But I feel like the the very last one I said where they kill the family member is the like normal non-empathetic storyline. My family member died and I had to kill the last family member. And then the destiny / tragedy is thrust upon me. Kind of a deal. And I just wanted to like call that out because I was like thinking about the fact of like how you could have written that story and how people tend to write that story. And you obviously wouldn't have the same story because his sister being a demon and following with him is like core to the storyline, right? And to be determined how core it's going to be and how fundamental and everything. But it's just an important factor of his character that he led with empathy in that moment.
Yeah, like it's the uniqueness of the story, the fact that he didn't, like, not only did he not kill his sister, it never was an option for him. It's not like he was like standing over her and was like shaking his hand and then he was like, no, I'm not going to do it. It was just natural. And like something that the video, the pop culture detective video said was that like, just like Newt Scamander, he doesn't really fundamentally change throughout the course of the movie. With Tanjiro, without the course of the series, it's like he also does, like he suffered a massive trauma. His entire family got wiped out and his sister got turned into a demon. Like the last of his family member got turned into a demon. And that didn't change him. He's still him. It's just that, you know, yeah, it changed his career. He was like, I need to find a cure. The only way to find the cure is to like find other demons and find out about like what they have. Can't really do that without being able to defend myself because the first thing they're going to do is try to kill me. But also, I want to make sure that this doesn't happen to other people. Kind of like what Batman did. Like tragedy happened to him, and he went out and made sure and is being fascist in his methods, but like he still doesn't want anything to happen. He like inherently doesn't want anything to happen to other people what happened to him. And Tanjiro is the same. But the thing is, he still acts like the good boy, the good kid that he always was. It's just that now he's a demon slayer.
So I have a thought. I'm gonna shift the conversation because I'm just really kind of curious to go here. We're talking a lot about like good empathy stuff. So I'm gonna totally go.
I think
everything's frozen and it's coming back. Okay, can you guys still hear me?
Yes, good? Now we can.
That was such a big cliffhanger too.
I know.
I was like,
I'm gonna go totally. I'm like totally what?
So I'm gonna go totally like left field. All right, so Fast and the Furious, clearly a movie that has masculine toxicity in it, right?
We're toxicity overload.
But we can't lie. We as men enjoy a lot of the stuff that's in there, and even there's lots of women who enjoy lots of the stuff that's in there. I'm not saying all of it. No. Or just hold up 1 second.
Fuck Tyrese Gibson.
Yo, I love those movies, man.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie.
Like I'm using this as an example because it caught my head and like
say Tyrese Gibson.
It's fine. Just stop talking about Tyrese. He's not in every movie, and I didn't specify a particular one. So,
hashtag fuck him.
Wow, never gonna get this point out. Sorry. You have all kinds of characters, all kinds of different things, right? You know, and Vin Diesel's like the archetype, yet he has empathy, but he's the archetype, right? And so obviously, like even my woman loves Fast and Furious, loves a lot of action films, right? And those characters represent a lot of the problem. Thing is, though, like, do you want them to go away or you want them to evolve? Like, because I feel like, and I'm not trying to defend toxic masculinity, especially in like day-to-day life, but I feel like sometimes there's a place for it. Right.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. I think if it fits the narrative of the story, then I think it's necessary. I don't think it needs to be heightened in every single movie, but like a movie like Fast and the Furious, I'm sorry, I don't want to see like an empathetic masculine man. Like it just doesn't fit within the storyline. Like I'm okay with that level of masculine toxicity because it fits the narrative of what they're building within that universe, right? But for other movies, like the Newt Scamander, yeah, that one, right? It would look weird as shit if we had a Vin Diesel type character who was the lead in that movie playing that role. Like it just wouldn't work for that particular narrative. So I think I agree with Darcy in the sense that like it's okay sometimes and it depends on where it's being utilized.
I'm sure I got a point. So interesting thing that was done in that video, the pop detective, is that Harry Potter represents more of masculine toxicity. I can't get the word out. Masculinity, whatever. Toxic masculinity than Newt Scamander does. And you know, off the top of my head, I never really thought of it. Like, yes, he falls into tropes. He doesn't come across as a toxic individual by any means because he seems more empathetic than Vin Diesel. Like, if you want to compare the two characters, but you know, unconsciously, I would have decided that after watching, I'm like, okay, I can see some things in that, and so. You know, I think it's like bring up the point of like, so we don't get a Vin Diesel obviously in Fantastic Beasts, but we do get the Harry Potters in that film, right? And they're closer to the archetype. They just look a little different. And I guess it's like, where do we see the change and how do we want to see the change? How do we get the balance that we want? Because obviously it's not all in one way or the other, because you know then it's just creating another problem. But how do we want to see some of the balance shifting?
I would want more. Like we've done toxic or stereotypical masculine to the brim. Like we are saturated with it. I would say that there have been subtler versions of that. Like Harry Potter, he's from Gryffindor, so he's more prideful and tends to want to be more competitive. And at the same time, he's got destiny thrust upon him, so he's got to like fight that Voldemort. But he's a softer version of like the toxic masculinity. Also, he's a kid, like he's a teenager, so he's going through adolescence at the same time, and he's growing in power. Like he's still he's literally being at school being taught how to use magic. But in terms of like the overall spectrum, I find that I personally am very pleased when I come across non-stereotypical male leads. Like Tanjiro is the most clear option, but let me put it this way. Let me ask you both, how do you feel about this new, like, would you want to see more? Like, kind of like a similar question to what you said, Darcy, like, but would you want to see more of this empathetic, more kinder, even less masculine type character to rise up to the level that there is a balance, or are you guys fine with like a once in a life, like once a year sort of character who does it?
Well, that's a good question, because it's like, do we appreciate these kind of empathetic characters more so because they're such a rarity and that we have seen such an influx of these toxic masculine characters? To the point where it's like we've had enough and now we want to see something different. But on the other side of the spectrum, let's say that, you know, we start seeing more of these empathetic characters being oversaturated in media, less of the toxic characters. Like, will the roles or the thought process differ, and we'll start to kind of crave more of those older tropes that we were used to?
Yeah, because like let's even look at action heroes from, you guys brought up Fast and Furious, like Vin Diesel's character and also The Rock's character versus like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone back from like the 80s.
Right.
Is there much of a difference in there? Are there just different types of subtle differences? I
think Vin Diesel's character is like, I'm going to say arguably 20% different, right? Or less. And it's impossible to put a percentage metric to it. Because the thing I feel that is potentially better about Vin Diesel's character specifically was the family aspect, right? They wrote into his character as time progressed. That was the only thing. The rest of it is like, I always appreciated it because it layered him, right? Like the thing I worry about, and going to Tactix' point about we appreciate them because they're rare. And I completely agree with that. I think we 100% do right now. I think that's one reason why we're all like, yeah, Tanjiro's amazing. But my worry is that we go from extreme to extreme. Now, let's be honest here. We're not going to get rid of toxic masculinity characters right out of the gate because there's too many toxic men who want them, right? Like who are producing the films, right? Who put the money behind them. The thing that I want to see is, and I've always wanted to see, is balance and nuance. Now, sometimes you want a movie, you want a Fast and the Furious. I don't want overly complex characters. 2 layers is good, right?
Yeah.
Give me 80% of the time he's just driving the car and blowing shit up, and then 20% of the time it's like for family, right? Like I'm good with that for that movie. And then I get annoyed when you have other movies that don't have nuance to them. Like, let's take a romantic comedy, right? You take a romantic comedy, you got like the old school, like Ryan Reynolds romantic comedy, right? Yeah. And there's too much like toxic male stuff that happens there that the romantic comedy could be way more interesting if they actually represented more real stuff. Like if we take the show, I forget the name right now, but Aziz Ansari's show.
I'll just look it up.
And I feel I haven't watched it yet. I'm dying to watch. I can't find a service to get it on. But they show.
It's great, man. It's a good show.
Yeah, the show Insecure too. You gotta get the Aziz Ansari name of the show. We gotta call it out because it is one of the best shows of all time. But
that's a Master of None.
Master of None. So the thing that was so amazing about the shows is how layered and authentic the characters felt in the way they communicated. Like the number one thing, and it has to do with their real life relationships, but their dialogue and their decision making felt way more real. Like when you have problems in relationships, they usually always paint it like people come up with these masterful sentences. People don't come up with masterful sentences. People come up with dumbass sentences when they're arguing with their partner. Like they rarely get a good point across. And usually when they do, it's like the 4th time they've had the argument, right? So they had really I'm like, that's kind of close to things that I've actually said that felt nuanced. And even if the character is toxic, the character has vulnerability because people have vulnerability. If they're hiding it, like vulnerability, it felt in like that kind of show closer to how people hide it in real life. And I think we have to represent that men do have toxic masculinity and show the nuances that it's like there's 5-6 different flavors built into this person, not one flavor only, like all day, all time. I'm, like The Rock and I'm doing this thing, which is good in some films, right? It's going back to like the popcorn film compared to the other film that has a high impact on you. I want to see a lot more in the middle, and I want the toxic masculinity to be an edge case, like the hardcore toxic masculinity to be an edge case, and I want Tanjiro's character to remain an edge case because it's an extreme, and I want more stuff in the middle where it's a little Tanjiro and a little bit of Vin Diesel all wrapped up into one, and I can't really put my finger on it anymore because it's more authentic that way.
How about you, T?
Yeah, I agree. I have nothing to add to that.
For me, I would say that I'm mostly in agreement with you on that one, Darcy. Because I will say that what I would like to see is now. To be fair, Newt, Scamander, and Fantastic Beasts itself, they didn't really gel with audiences. A lot of people were kind of bored with him. They're like, oh, well, he's kind of like a unassuming dude who doesn't really come alive. Like he's just like kind of quiet, which is fair.
He's not the norm.
He's not the norm. And even just like you're saying, Darcy, like in society, in real life, he's also not the norm.
Yeah, and they're waiting for him to evolve into the next step, right? Like the Harry Potters, which, let's be honest, Harry Potter did put forth a unfortunate set of requirements for that movie, right?
Yeah.
Umar, Stay with us.
Sorry. But like, what I like about the fact that with Fantastic Beasts was that like he didn't change. Just like in Demon Slayer, he isn't changing. They are who they are, and they are sweet, kind, deeply sensitive, and also outsiders who can observe the toxicity of everyday sort of life. But I also agree that like having the witty and charismatic and afraid to show vulnerability, like the quip guys, like Ryan Reynolds, Aziz Ansari. I'm trying to think. Robert Downey Jr. even to a certain extent. Those guys.
He definitely has some toxic masculinity. Tony Stark is toxic sometimes.
Exactly. So
like his history.
Having more characters that kind of have more of less of a journey to go through, and more are already the sweet, kind, sensitive souls, and that being okay. I think, like personally, I would want more of that. So that kind of leads me to my last question. How do I put this? So, can you guys identify at least like one or two other male characters or other male leads that kind of fit within this empathetic, sensitive soul type at all? Like, do you guys have anyone in mind?
Can I say a gate? No, because they don't really exist, but I'm going to put forward half-ass answers. Just like, because I don't want to be called like, I say it and they're like, yeah, no, he's toxic as hell. I'm like, I know, they all are.
I will agree that like a certain element of us we're still going to find it very difficult to make this work. But I challenge you both and myself.
I don't even feel strong in what I'm about to say, because I see typical archetypes in it, but I do appreciate aspects of the empathy of the characters. But it's kind of like Tanjiro, but it's kind of not like Tanjiro. The brothers from Full Metal Alchemist.
Okay.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? It's like it's weak, but
more
it's
Alphonse.
Yeah, it's the one that's the one in the steel, right? Yeah. Alphonse definitely more, because the other one definitely is more action oriented and jump first and all of that stuff. And the other one, he's more like Tanjiro. He does enjoy himself out there at times, but he's definitely the holding back one.
And he's a sweet one. He's the kind one, and also he's a smart one who can like also hold his own in a fight.
And I also want to like kind of emphasize, like, I don't think that Tanjiro or Newt necessarily are like, I feel like they can easily become the only example because it's the only example we know, right? Yeah. And I feel like it's just about trying to have more empathy in the characters. I think there's good empathy between the brothers because of like what happened with their family, and I think that, you know, sometimes we've seen it in the is he the older brother, or are they the same age? I think he's the older brother, right?
No, Ed is the older one. Alphonse.
Yeah, no, that's what I meant to say. I was sorry, I didn't say it out loud, but I was thinking the one that's not in the steel is older. Yeah, that's my submission.
Okay. Tactics.
I was gonna say Captain America and Aang.
Oh,
Aang.
Oh.
Yeah.
Aang does have destiny thrust upon him, though.
Yeah, definitely.
And he, actually,
he is very empathetic. He's almost like, I don't want to do it, and then I have to do it. It's a little iffy.
He also he does have to grow his powers, and also he finds like his place in the world, something that he's struggling with. But like in terms of actual personality, I think T, you're on the right track on that one, because even like, spoiler warning for people who haven't seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, in the end, everyone is telling him to kill the Fire Lord. He finds another way. And he is always shown like he uses defense, except for that one time in the desert when he went all crazy. But like his violence is only ever for defense, and he never takes a life. And he is a 12-year-old kid, but he never loses that. He just kind of becomes more mature but like a mature version of himself. That that actually might fit.
Yeah, I think it's a good nuanced example because, again, I think Umar, you're maybe here trying to completely put it in that box,
Right?
And,
Yeah.
right? Because it's like the reaction to too much is to do the opposite, and it's not about making it 100% over the line. It's about getting more of it over the line. Sometimes even a majority of it over the line, so to speak. I like the Captain America one because the specifically Chris Evans variation of it.
Yeah.
And I knew that's what we're going for here is like, he is actually the same character the entire time. Even to the very end, he very, I would say he only kind of changes by the end in the perspective when he's like, well, that's Captain America's ass, right? Like he's he's kind of like changed a little bit about himself. But I think I like and think it's amazing with the characters when he's so small. Yes, he is very action oriented, but there's something about his fight that is not like every other man. His fight was, and I get it's nuanced, and this character might be more 50-50, but it's very much like he feels his duty to like fight alongside his fellow man is different than the guy who's like, wants to go and kill the Nazis and and rah rah rah, or like the police officer's like, I can't wait to go out and do car chases and catch the bad guys. He never comes across like that. It's more like he's like the police officer who wants to protect people and would put his body in front of a bullet. He's not the guy who's having a good time chasing the criminal.
Why did you choose him, Tactix?
Same thing. I got a real sense of his authenticity through all of the films. Like he stayed consistent. The only time that I felt like he broke out of that character or that trope was the one that Darcy highlighted about America's ass, but also the confrontation that he had in Avengers, the first Avengers movie with him and Tony, where they were going back and forth, and he was like, "Yeah, take off the suit and let's see how much of a man you are." Something to that effect.
Put on the suit.
Put on the suit or whatever, and we'll see how long you last, kind of thing. And that's kind of where that toxic masculinity kind of bled through a little bit. But that aside, I felt like he was very much consistent with that trope. And yeah, I mean, once you brought this topic, that like Captain America was like my first pick initially, because I was just
I would say like I mostly agree with you guys, because he is the more like we were discussing in an earlier show. He's like the guy who's like in that movie theater about himself, and he's just kind of like very like humble. But I will say, like, I did notice a change in him over the films. He went from the guy who followed orders no matter what. Like he was a soldier. He followed orders. That's what he was doing. And like throughout the films, he went from following orders to questioning orders to giving the orders to actually rebelling against authority.
But does that make him less empathetic for that? Like,
no, you would say that like it depends really, because he was in a very simple time, so following orders made sense. Going into like the modern world that he had to, it's a great deal more complex, and like what is right is a lot more difficult, and frankly what is right is actually sometimes illegal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because he's doing it with the thought of others, right?
Yeah.
Like in Winter Soldier, when they're talking about putting up like the big airships, and he's like, this is not good for the people. Like, you're not thinking about, like, they're thinking about the mission, and they're not thinking about the consequence of the mission.
Yeah.
100% thinking with the consequence of the mission. But the thing that's interesting about both of the characters that you chose is that they both represent, like, if you want to say 50-50 to make it easy, they are very highly empathetic, and yet they have very much a destiny thrust upon them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even though I want to say, though, Captain America kind of chose it a little bit more. But he
volunteered.
He volunteered into the destiny that we saw, but I think he was born with the feeling of the destiny before he got it. Like, if it wasn't Captain America, he would have ended up in it as some other super soldier in some other way, because he was going to be there. No matter what, it was like born into his character.
So, okay, I'll give you guys my submissions. I came up with two. They were like wrestling for this one though. So, like, I would say Charles Xavier, James McAvoy from X-Men First Class, specifically because he was a lead in that one. The other ones, he was like a co-lead, or he was like, supporting character, that sort of thing. So I would say X-Men First Class for him being a lead. And then Frodo from Lord of the Rings. Have you guys watched Lord of the Rings?
Yeah. Frodo is the buddy, right?
No, Frodo is like the guy with the ring.
Oh, the main character. Yeah, sorry. Actually,
have you seen Lord of the Rings?
I saw the first one, but I don't remember.
We need to get you more into fantasy.
Nah, you don't. No space, no fantasy.
Okay.
So, sorry, what was the first one before Frodo?
Charles Xavier.
Charles Xavier.
So the thing that bothers me, and I get like it struggles to get it. The thing that bothers me with that character, he very much, as the character progresses, especially with all the Charles Xaviers, but especially McAvoy and like the cartoons and stuff like that, he very much holds things close to the chest and keeps it from everybody else. And that's part of that toxic masculinity. Like, he doesn't, even though he brings the team together, he doesn't always. Like, he does things that are like that Magneto is very right about, that he's like, he kind of keeps the truth sometimes from people and crosses lines. And it represents the toxic masculine like archetype at times.
Like, and that's a secret keeper.
Yeah, and the thing about his character is actually the thing that's always bothered me about his character. And it's always written to be like an upsetting thing, but I think it sometimes they're like, oh, well, it's kind of necessary. But it always bothered me because I always kind of felt, and I guess I'm realizing it now, as a kid, I always felt like that character was supposed to be so empathetic that when he did that, it felt like a betrayal. Right?
Yeah, like look at the thing with like him and Jean Grey, like how he suppressed her power or her memory or whatever for that. Like, it just, even I was kind of like, that's kind of not the way you do it, man. That's a dick move.
Well, like, which time, like X-Men 3 or X-Men Dark Phoenix?
All of them. I feel like he's had that trope in all iterations of the character.
So I would say that what I liked about McAvoy's version in X-Men Dark Phoenix was the fact that it was looked at as like a father figure who was trying to protect his daughter, and it was like doing something out of love, doing the wrong thing. Definitely the wrong thing, but it was like doing it for like the right reason almost. It's like, like you loved her, you wanted to protect her, and so like you thought this was the best course of action, which parents do. Like they make mistakes out of love. But no, I do see what you're both saying. The reason, and that's why I focused on Charles Xavier from First Class, because in First Class that wasn't quite the thing yet. He was happy to meet other mutants. He saw Mystique. He's like, bring you into my home. He meets up with Charles, with Eric and Magneto. He's like, let me save you. Let me like, let me like give you a purpose and like make you stronger, and also like show you that you're not all this anger. And at the end, he lets them both go together, knowing that like we don't want the same things. I want. And like he's even somewhat even forgiving of the fact that his best friend just paralyzed him, and he's just like, you guys should go together, because like I don't want that.
As much as that happens, every one of his biggest problems comes from a toxic archetype, right? Like when I recently watched
he becomes arrogant. That's absolutely
he becomes arrogant, and all of his issues with Mystique always kind of revolve around something of some arrogant holding something to the chest kind of a problem, and him feeling like it's all on him and it's his destiny. And I think he takes it out of other people's hands. And sometimes it's a good leader who has empathy knows when to push their people so that they can achieve things, and knows when to step in front and take the hit for your people. And at times he takes the option out of his people's hands to step forward and hides it from them, and then does it himself. And it's always been the thing about his character that I think even in the McAvoy, like I love McAvoy's acting, but every time I see it, I'm like, it's just so pathetic to me. It's like, it's
interesting.
I don't like it because he's supposed to represent to me a lot of the opposite of like Magneto. And if you saw the most recent X-Men movie, Dark Phoenix, whatever. Which I'm not saying it's a great film. I mean, it has good moments, but it's not a great film. But when you see the Magneto, like the village of people he has, Magneto at times does a better job of community than Professor X, because he sometimes, like Charles, has it more in a facade, and Magneto is more open about it, which is actually almost more empathetic. Even though he is more of masculine, like dominant, it's almost more honest. Like he's like, this actually is how I am. And whereas Charles sometimes is kind of painting a picture of what it should be, but he's not actually living up to it in his actual actions sometimes, which bothers me about his character. So I didn't know that was a trigger that just get that.
No, I kind of agree with that too, because I think also about like he was, I always remember him like preaching about acceptance and like being true to who you are and everything, and like Darcy was saying, he didn't really follow that to a T fully. And on top of that, if I'm remembering correctly, because I haven't seen the movies in quite some time, but I remember in First Class he made this comment to Mystique when she was in her human form that made her feel like a certain way about her. Like, sorry, not when she was in her human form, when she was in her actual mutant form. He made a comment about her, like, oh yeah, like you're in your mutant form. Like, what's up with that? And he made her feel like she wasn't going to be accepted by the public if she showed her true colors. So she always had to put on that human face. Whereas in another scene, Magneto was like, show me who you really are. And she was like, she put on her human form at first, and he was like, no, that's not who you really are. And it was more so like
real Raven.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So it was kind of like it kind of went against what he was trying to preach in terms of like I get that he was trying to be like the protective father figure and everything like that. Like I get it to that extent, but it's hard to really rally behind a leader like that who preaches one thing but then does the complete opposite. Whereas like what Darcy was saying, Magneto was like up front. He laid out all his cards on the table and he said it like it was, and there was nothing that he was holding back. He was just like, this is who the fuck I am. I'm an extremist. If you ride with me, let's do this shit. If not, then go be with Professor X.
But that's exactly the point. Like Magneto is inherently adversarial, and he doesn't want balance. He wants superiority. He wants to take over. With Xavier, the way I see it is like he has like his powers are innately empathetic. He knows how people feel, so therefore he is empathetic. He also knows what they think, and he can feel their pain. So literally he's literally empathetic, but like also he takes all of that and he's like, yes, he can be secretive, absolutely. He can be even manipulative. Let's go as far to call him manipulative, and he's not straight-laced like Magneto. Magneto, like, it's both a blessing and a curse. This guy, like, you know where you stand with this guy. He comes at you, you know why. He's, telling you to fight with him, you know why. Like, he's in your face, just like you said, Tactix. But what I found about Xavier with McAvoy's version in First Class is that he is secretive because he believes literally the first line of defense is anonymity, is being secretive, because he believes the moment you start showing the public who you are, they will kill you.
It's true. Something that I'm appreciating in this moment is the nuance of the writing between these two characters, specifically Fassbender and McAvoy, and their acting chops, and be able to hold it down, because they are supposed to be yin and yang, and they are very yin and yang in the sense that, like, if we're talking about toxic masculinity, like, you take the empathy that Xavier has, and then it turns into almost a god complex at some point, and then it turns to toxic masculinity. And you take Fassbender, who has, like, the Batman scenario kind of starting point, and then he's the archetype who balances, but it still stays like half an archetype. And they
both develop a god complex, to be honest.
and I mean, how could they not with their powers too? But there was a something that was really dope that kind of came out of this is that oh, sorry, no, not dope. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm back though. So the thing that I was trying to say was, if you were to rewrite Xavier to be more like Tanjiro, where he's highly empathetic, doesn't falter to the God complex, and is really smart, then you have to make Magneto even more toxic.
That's true,
right? Because he needs the adversary to go against. And even though I don't love everything about Charles, I actually appreciate them kind of being stuck in the nuance that they are both toxic and have some level of empathy. Maybe they could have more, but it's just something that I kind of realized that you would have to make them one in extreme just to write the other one to be completely good.
Okay. Well, then I say we like wrap it up there and kind of like ask the audience, like, what can you guys think of other empathetic, sensitive, kind, like purely male leads? And do you guys want to see more of that, or are you guys happy with our current trend of heroes? But yeah.
Cool. How you doing there, Umar? You're fading fast.
I'm fading fast. Those drugs are not holding up.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in. This has been another edition of the Geeky Bros podcast. I'm your boy Tactix.
It's your boy Darcy.
And I'm the very sick, big geek Umar. Live long and prosper, y'all.
And we are out.